Welcome to my channel, where we dive deep into stories that matter, unfiltered and unafraid. This channel is fully anonymous, bringing you hard-hitting documentaries without compromise. To keep this project alive despite YouTube's restrictions, every documentary is available as an NFT for just $5 on OpenSea. Grab yours using the link in the description and own a piece of the truth.
Forward, forward. Arjuna!
Shaped the destiny of the Middle East for generations. At its genesis was the Zionist movement, a potent blend of Jewish aspiration and British imperial ambition, conceived not merely as a dream of a homeland, but as a chess move in the great game of global dominance. This is the story of how Western elites, with calculated precision, wove a tapestry of prophecy and power, beginning with the fervent ideals of Zionism and culminating in a century of orchestrated upheaval. The Zionist movement, as we know it, was born in 1896 with the publication of Der Judenstaat, penned by Theodor Herzl, a Viennese journalist and visionary. The idea I have developed, Herzl declared, is a simple one: to set up a state for the Jews. His clarion call, born of rising anti-Semitism in Europe, found fertile ground in Britain, where Christian Zionists and imperial strategists saw in it a divine and pragmatic opportunity. Men of influence, such as Lord Shaftesbury, a devout evangelical, had long championed the restoration of Jews to Palestine, proclaiming in 1839, "The Jews must be encouraged to return to their own land, as foretold by Scripture." This biblical zeal, wedded to Britain's imperial designs on the Suez Canal and the Ottoman East, set the stage for a remarkable convergence of interests. By the early 20th century, the Zionist cause gained a powerful ally in Chaim Weizmann, a charismatic chemist whose eloquence and scientific contributions won him entry into Britain's elite circles. Weizmann, a Russian émigré in Manchester, forged bonds with men like Arthur James Balfour, then a rising statesman, who in 1905 confided to Weizmann his fascination with the restoration of the Jewish people. Balfour's Christian Zionist leanings, shared by figures such as Prime Minister David Lloyd George, aligned with Britain's strategic need to secure Palestine as a bulwark for its empire. The Zionist movement, Lloyd George later remarked, is of far profounder import than the desires of 700,000 Arabs. Meanwhile, the Rothschild family, led by Baron Lionel Walter Rothschild, lent financial and political weight, their banking empire amplifying the Zionist voice in Whitehall. The crucible of the Great War brought these threads together. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration, a letter from Balfour to Rothschild, pledged His Majesty's government to view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Crafted with Weizmann's input and backed by Sir Mark Sykes, a diplomat whose Sykes-Picot agreement carved up the Ottoman lands, this document was no mere gesture. It was a calculated act, designed to secure Jewish support for the Allied cause and anchor Britain's influence in the Middle East. As the ink dried on the Balfour Declaration, binding Britain's fortunes to the Zionist dream, another act in this grand Middle Eastern spectacle was unfolding across the sands of Arabia. In 1915, amidst the tumult of the Great War, His Majesty's government struck a clandestine pact with a rising desert chieftain, Abdulaziz al-Saud, known to history as Ibn Saud. The Treaty of Darin, signed on the windswept shores of Terut Island, was no mere diplomatic footnote. It was a meticulously crafted scene in the Western elite's imperial script, designed to secure Arabia's riches and ensure Britain's dominion over the crumbling Ottoman realm. The stage for this agreement was set by the Ottoman Empire's decline, a once mighty power now faltering under the weight of war. Britain, ever vigilant for opportunities to expand its influence, sought allies to destabilize its Turkish foe. Ibn Saud, a fierce Wahhabi leader who had reclaimed Riyadh in 1902, emerged as a potent instrument. His alliance with the puritanical cleric Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, forged in 1744, had birthed a zealous movement that Britain saw as a weapon against Ottoman rule. The British, with their eyes on the Persian Gulf's trade routes and nascent oil fields, recognized in Ibn Saud a loyal proxy to counter the Ottoman-aligned al-Rashid dynasty of Hayil. At the heart of this maneuver stood Sir Percy Cox, Britain's political resident in the Persian Gulf, a master of imperial chess whose steady hand shaped the region's destiny. Cox, with the backing of the Foreign Office, met Ibn Saud in December 1915 to seal the Treaty of Darin. This accord, signed aboard a British vessel, declared Ibn Saud's territories a protectorate, granting him £20,000 in gold, a monthly stipend of £5,000, and a steady flow of rifles to fuel his conquests. In return, Ibn Saud pledged loyalty to Britain, vowing to refrain from all aggression on or interference with the territories of Kuwait and other British protectorates as the treaty's text stipulated. Cox, a pragmatist, saw Ibn Saud's ambition as a tool, noting in a 1916 dispatch, "His influence, if properly directed, could serve our interests admirably." Another figure, Captain William Henry Irvine Shakespeare, laid the groundwork for this alliance. Before his death in January 1915, battling the al-Rashid at Jarab, Shakespeare had met Ibn Saud and championed him as a British ally. "This man is a born leader," Shakespeare wrote in 1914, "capable of uniting the tribes under our banner." His reports, brimming with enthusiasm for Ibn Saud's Wahhabi zeal, persuaded British elites to invest in this rising star. The Foreign Office, guided by strategists like Sir Mark Sykes, already entwined with the Zionist cause, saw Arabia as another piece in their imperial mosaic, a counterweight to the Hashemite Sharif Hussein of Mecca, whose ambitions for a pan-Arab state threatened British control. As the echoes of the Great War faded, the Middle East became a stage for two seemingly disparate movements, yet both were intricately woven into the tapestry of Western ambition. In Palestine, Jewish settlers, emboldened by the 1917 Balfour Declaration, began their pilgrimage to a promised homeland, while in Arabia, Abdulaziz al-Saud, fortified by the 1915 Treaty of Darin, carved a nascent kingdom from the desert sands. These twin ascensions, orchestrated by British elites, were no mere coincidence, but acts in a grand imperial drama, where Zionists and Saudis, though distinct in creed, danced to the same tune of Western design, their paths converging under the watchful gaze of their puppet masters. In Palestine, the Zionist vision, articulated by Theodor Herzl and championed by Chaim Weizmann, took root under Britain's mandate, established in 1920 by the League of Nations. Weizmann, a master of diplomacy, rallied Jewish immigrants, some 35,000 by 1925, to settle the land, declaring in a 1919 speech, "We shall create a Jewish commonwealth, not merely for ourselves, but as a beacon of progress in the East." The British, led by figures like Colonial Secretary Winston Churchill and High Commissioner Herbert Samuel, a secular Jew and Zionist sympathizer, facilitated this influx, seeing in it a loyal outpost to secure the Suez Canal. Samuel, in his 1915 memorandum, The Future of Palestine, had envisioned a home for millions of Jews, aligning their aspirations with Britain's strategic need to control the Levant. Simultaneously, in Arabia, Ibn Saud's star rose with British backing. The Treaty of Darin, signed by Sir Percy Cox, had armed and funded his campaign against the Ottoman-aligned al-Rashid dynasty. By 1921, Ibn Saud had captured Ha'il, and by 1924, his Ikhwan warriors stormed Mecca, ousting Sharif Hussein, the Hashemite rival Britain had once courted. "Our alliance with Britain," Ibn Saud proclaimed in a 1922 letter to Cox, "is the cornerstone of our strength, ensuring our triumph over those who defy God's will." Cox, alongside Harry St. John Philby, a fervent advocate for Ibn Saud, ensured a steady flow of rifles and gold, £100,000 annually by 1924, cementing his path to unifying Arabia by 1932. Philby, who later converted to Islam, wrote in 1920, "Ibn Saud is the man to back. His vision will reshape Arabia under our guidance." Though worlds apart, the Zionists and the House of Saud shared a fleeting moment of mutual interest, orchestrated by their British patrons. Both were Western-aligned proxies designed to fracture Arab unity and secure imperial interests. Weizmann and Ibn Saud, though never allies, were pawns in the same game, their ambitions tethered to Britain's divide and conquer strategy. A tentative connection emerged in 1918, when Weizmann, seeking Arab acquiescence, met with Faisal, Sharif Hussein's son and briefly king of Greater Syria. At Aqaba, Weizmann proposed cooperation, stating, "Our movement seeks no enmity with the Arabs. We wish to live as neighbors." Faisal, in a 1919 letter to Weizmann, expressed cautious support for Jewish settlement, provided Arab independence was respected, a hope dashed by the Sykes-Picot Agreement's secret carve-up of the region. Yet this fragile accord masked deeper tensions. Ibn Saud, ascendant in Arabia, viewed Zionist ambitions with suspicion, his Wahhabi zeal clashing with Jewish claims to Palestine. The British, under Churchill's stewardship at the 1921 Cairo Conference, deftly balanced these forces, endorsing Ibn Saud's dominion over Arabia while affirming the Zionist project in Palestine. "We must secure our interests," Churchill declared in a 1921 memorandum, "by fostering allies who, though divided, serve our purpose." Other events swirled in this crucible. The Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, co-authored by Sir Mark Sykes, who also backed Zionism, partitioned the Ottoman lands, ensuring British and French control. The Arab Revolt, led by Sharif Hussein and T.E. Lawrence, faltered as Britain pivoted to Ibn Saud, betraying Hussein's pan-Arab dreams. Thus, as Jewish settlers built their future in Palestine and Ibn Saud forged his kingdom in Arabia, the British elites, with their American and European counterparts waiting in the wings, directed a masterful performance. Weizmann and Ibn Saud, though never friends, were unwitting actors in a script that pitted Jew against Arab, Sunni against Shia, ensuring the Middle East remained a fractured stage for Western dominance. The seeds of this grand design, sown in the early 20th century, would bear fruit in decades of upheaval, where prophets and potentates would rise and fall at the behest of their unseen masters. As the world descended into the cataclysm of the Second World War, the Middle East, already a stage for Britain's imperial machinations, became a crucible where the destinies of Zionists, Arabs, and Western elites collided. The war, with its horrors and upheavals, supercharged the Zionist movement, solidified the House of Saud's strategic ascent, and tightened the grip of Western puppet masters orchestrating their grand design. From the ashes of Europe's tragedy, the seeds of conflict sown by the Balfour Declaration and the Treaty of Darin bore bitter fruit as prophets and potentates played their roles in a drama scripted by London and, increasingly, Washington. The war's most profound impact on the Zionist movement was the Holocaust, the Nazi regime's genocidal campaign against Europe's Jews. Adolf Hitler, whose venomous ideology fueled this atrocity, had long railed against Zionism, viewing it as a Jewish conspiracy for global control. In his 1925 manifesto, Mein Kampf, he declared, "The Jew, with his Zionist ideals, seeks to dominate nations through a so-called homeland, a mask for their international machinations." Yet, paradoxically, the Nazis' persecution drove desperate Jewish refugees toward Palestine, swelling the ranks of settlers under the British Mandate. By 1945, GG immigration, which had reached 75,000 by 1939, surged further, with 15,000, 20,000 entering annually despite British restrictions, as documented in Mandate reports. Chaim Weizmann, the Zionist leader, seized this moment, pleading in a 1942 speech to American Zionists. "The tragedy of our people demands a homeland now, more than ever. Palestine is our refuge and our right." In Palestine, the influx of Jewish settlers inflamed tensions with the Arab population, who saw their land slipping away under British complicity. Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and a prominent Palestinian leader, fiercely opposed Zionist immigration, declaring in a 1937 address to the Arab Higher Committee, "The Jews, with British backing, aim to dispossess us. We will resist this colonial plot with our blood." Husseini's controversial wartime alliance with Nazi Germany, including meetings with Hitler in 1941 to seek support against Zionism, underscored the desperation of Palestinian resistance. Yet, his actions, condemned by many Arabs, served the Western elite's script, casting Palestinians as adversaries to justify British control and Zionist claims. Across the Arabian Peninsula, Abdulaziz al-Saud, now King of Saudi Arabia, navigated the war with cautious pragmatism, balancing his British alliance with growing American influence. The House of Saud, having unified most of Arabia by 1932 with British arms and subsidies, maintained neutrality in the war, as Ibn Saud declared in a 1940 letter to President Franklin Roosevelt. "Our kingdom stands apart from global conflicts, yet we guard our sovereignty and faith." Saudi Arabia's nascent oil wealth, tapped by American companies like Standard Oil of California, Aramco in 1938, drew U.S. attention. A 1943 meeting in Cairo between Ibn Saud and U.S. envoy Colonel Harold Hoskins solidified this shift, with Hoskins noting, "The King's cooperation is vital to our interests in the region's oil." Britain, though still dominant, acquiesced as Winston Churchill, in a 1944 memo, acknowledged, "The Americans must share the burden of Arabia, for its resources are our lifeblood." Connections between Zionists and Saudis during the war were tenuous, their interests diverging under the weight of competing visions. Ibn Saud, a staunch Wahhabi, opposed Zionist settlement, viewing it as a Western imposition. In a 1937 letter to British High Commissioner Harold MacMichael, he warned, The Jewish incursion in Palestine threatens the sanctity of our holy lands. Britain must restrain this ambition. Yet, both groups shared a reliance on Western patronage. Zionists, through Weizmann's lobbying of Churchill and Lord Rothschilds' financial clout, and Saudis through Ibn Saud's alliance with Sir Percy Cox's successors and U.S. oil interests. The 1943 Cairo Conference, where Churchill and Roosevelt strategized Middle Eastern policy, epitomized this orchestration, balancing Zionist aspirations with Saudi oil concessions to secure Allied victory. Other events swirled in this tempest. The 1939 White Paper, issued by Britain to curb Jewish immigration in response to the Arab Revolt, 1936 to 1939, betrayed Zionist hopes, prompting Weizmann to lament, "The British have abandoned us in our hour of need." Meanwhile, the war's North African campaigns, fought across Egypt and Libya, underscored the Middle East's strategic value, with Rommel's Africa cause threatening British control. The elites, led by Churchill and Roosevelt, manipulated these currents, using the Zionist cause to rally Jewish support in the West and Saudi neutrality to secure oil, all while sowing discord to prevent Arab unity. As Churchill remarked in a 1943 speech to Parliament, "Our policy in the Middle East is to foster stability through strength, aligning those who serve our ends." World War II, with its seismic shifts, propelled the Zionist movement toward its goal, as Jewish suffering galvanized global support for a homeland, while cementing Saudi Arabia's role as an oil-rich ally under Western tutelage. Yet, the seeds of conflict, sown by British and now American elites, ensured that Palestine and Arabia would remain stages for their grand design. Ibn Saud and Weizmann, though never reconciled, were unwitting actors in a script that pitted Jew against Arab, Sunni against Shia, all to secure the West's dominion. As the war's dust settled, the stage was set for a new act, one where coups, revolutions, and chaos would further entwine the fates of these orchestrated players.
Gas chamber, battle dress, determined to defend.
As the embers of the Second World War cooled, the Middle East emerged as a crucible of conflict and ambition, its destiny shaped by the deft hands of Western elites. The years 1948 and 1953 marked two seismic acts in their meticulously scripted spectacle. The establishment of the State of Israel, a triumph for the Zionist cause, and the audacious coup in Iran, which restored a pliant monarch to secure the West's black gold. These events, far from isolated, were choreographed by British and American puppet masters, with Jewish, Arab, and Persian actors playing their roles in a drama designed to perpetuate division and dominion. Yet, beneath the surface, fleeting connections and clashing interests between Zionists, Britons, and Arabs revealed the intricate threads of this imperial tapestry. In Palestine, the Zionist dream, nurtured by Chaim Weizmann and the Rothschilds, reached its zenith on May 14, 1948, when David Ben-Gurion, standing beneath a portrait of Theodor Herzl, proclaimed the establishment of Israel. "The land of Israel is the birthplace of the Jewish people," Ben-Gurion declared, "and here their state is reborn." The British, having governed Palestine under the Mandate since 1920, withdrew amid escalating violence, leaving behind a land of 600,000 Jewish settlers and 1.2 million Arabs. The 1947 United Nations Partition Plan, endorsed by the United States and Britain, proposed a Jewish state on 56% of Palestine, a decision Weizmann hailed as a turning point in our history. Yet, Palestinian Arabs, led by figures like Haj Amin al-Husseini, rejected the plan, with Husseini proclaiming in a 1947 speech, "We will never accept the partition of our homeland. It is a colonial theft." The ensuing Arab-Israeli war saw Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and others clash with Israel, resulting in 700,000 Palestinian refugees and Israel's expansion to 78% of the territory by 1949. Across the Arabian Peninsula, King Abdulaziz Al Saud, now firmly ensconced as Saudi Arabia's ruler, watched these events with wary disapproval. His kingdom, unified by 1932 with British arms and subsidies, had grown into an oil powerhouse under American patronage, with Aramco's wells pumping wealth by 1948. Ibn Saud, a staunch opponent of Zionism, viewed Israel's creation as a Western betrayal. In a 1948 letter to President Harry Truman, he warned, "The establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine is an act of aggression against the Arab nation, sowing discord in our sacred lands." Saudi Arabia, though not directly engaged in the Arab-Israeli war, provided financial support to Egypt and Jordan, aligning with the Arab League's boycott of Israel. Yet, Ibn Saud's reliance on U.S. oil contracts tempered his actions, as he confided to American envoy William Eddy in 1947, "Our friendship with America is vital, but the Zionist issue tests our resolve." Connections between Zionists and Saudis were sparse, their interests sharply at odds. The fleeting 1918 Weizmann-Faisal Accord, where Faisal, Ibn Saud's Hashemite rival, cautiously endorsed Jewish settlement, had long collapsed under the weight of Arab opposition. By 1948, Weizmann's efforts to engage Arab leaders, including a failed 1943 proposal to meet Ibn Saud, facilitated by British diplomat Harold McMichael, underscored the divide. Weizmann lamented in a 1948 diary entry, "The Arabs see us as intruders. Our dream is their nightmare." The British, led by Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin, played both sides, arming Arab states like Jordan while allowing Zionist militias like the Haganah to prepare for conflict. Bevin, in a 1947 speech to Parliament, admitted, "Our task in Palestine is impossible. We must balance Jewish hopes with Arab rights, yet serve our interests." This duplicity ensured chaos, aligning with the elite's strategy to keep the region fractured. 5 years later, in 1953, the Western elites staged another act in Tehran, where the CIA and MI6 orchestrated Operation Ajax to overthrow Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. His nationalization of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, AIOC, in 1951 had threatened British and American oil interests, prompting a ruthless response. Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the CIA's mastermind, bribed military officers and mobs, restoring Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to power. The coup was carried out under CIA direction, a declassified 1953 agency report later revealed, to secure Iran's oil and counter Soviet influence. Mossadegh, defiant to the end, declared in his 1953 trial, "My only crime was to defend Iran's sovereignty against foreign greed." The Shah, now a Western puppet, consolidated power with CIA-trained SAVAK, ensuring Iran's alignment with the US and Britain. Connections to the Zionist and Arab spheres were indirect but telling. The Shah, wary of Arab nationalism, quietly aligned with Israel, sharing intelligence through Mossad by the late 1950s to counter Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, a pan-Arabist threat. Ibn Saud, though critical of the Shah's Western ties, maintained neutrality, as oil revenues tied him to the U.S. In a 1953 meeting with U.S. Ambassador George Wadsworth, Ibn Saud remarked, "Iran's turmoil serves as a warning. We must guard our independence while keeping faith with our allies." The British, pivotal in both Israel's creation and Iran's coup, leveraged figures like Winston Churchill, now Prime Minister again, who in 1953 confided to Eisenhower, "Our interests in the Middle East, oil, Israel, stability, demand bold action, whatever the cost." As the 20th century unfurled its turbulent second act, the Middle East, a stage meticulously set by Western elites, erupted in a series of crises that reshaped its contours. The 1973 oil embargo, the Gulf War of 1990 to 1991, and the shadowy assassination of Saudi Arabia's King Faisal in 1975, alongside the seismic 1979 Iranian Revolution, were not mere historical accidents, but choreographed scenes in the grand imperial drama. From the opulent halls of London and Washington, the puppet masters, British, American, and European elites, orchestrated these events, manipulating Jewish, Arab, and Persian actors to secure oil, power, and division. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions, betrayals, and fleeting alliances revealed the intricate machinations of this orchestrated spectacle. The 1973 oil embargo, a bold defiance led by King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, marked a turning point. Enraged by U.S. support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War, Faisal, alongside other Arab OPEC members, slashed oil production and banned exports to the United States and its allies. Oil prices quadrupled from $2.90 to $11.65 per barrel, crippling Western economies. "We are using our wealth to defend our rights," Faisal declared in a 1973 interview with al-Hadith, "for Palestine is the heart of the Arab cause." The embargo, lasting from October 1973 to March 1974, cost the U.S. a 6% GDP drop and doubled unemployment to 9%, as reported by the U.S. Treasury. Yet, Faisal's defiance, while rallying Arab support, provoked Western elites. U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, in a 1974 memo, warned, "The oil producers must be brought to heel. Their actions threaten our economic order." Faisal's stance galvanized the Arab world, but strained relations with Israel and its Western backers. Chaim Weizmann's successor, David Ben-Gurion, long retired, had warned in a 1967 interview, "Arab oil is a weapon aimed at our existence." Israel, now a regional power, relied on U.S. arms and diplomatic cover, which Faisal's embargo challenged. The Saudis, though linked to Zionists through their mutual dependence on Western patronage, stood firmly with Palestine, as Faisal reiterated in a 1974 letter to President Nixon. "The Zionist state undermines our region's stability. Justice demands its restraint." This clash of interests, orchestrated by elites like Kissinger and British Prime Minister Edward Heath, deepened Arab-Israeli divides, ensuring the Middle East remained a fractured stage. On March 25, 1975, the drama took a sinister turn when Faisal was assassinated by his nephew, Faisal bin Mossad, in Riyadh. The prince, recently returned from studying in the United States, shot Faisal during a majlis, a public audience. Saudi investigations, led by Prince Turki al-Faisal, deemed it an individual act, citing the assassin's grief over his brother Khaled's 1965 death during a protest against Faisal's reforms. Yet, whispers of Western complicity swirled. Faisal bin Musaid's U.S. education and drug arrest in Colorado fueled speculation of CIA manipulation, though no declassified evidence supports this. Prince Turki later stated in 2020, "No foreign hand was found in the act." Still, the timing, 2 years after the embargo, served Western interests, as Faisal's successor, King Khalid, restored oil flows and U.S. ties. Kissinger, in a 1975 cable, noted, "Saudi Arabia's new leadership is more amenable to our goals."
There he goes. There it goes.
The Gulf War of 1990–1991 further showcased the elite's script. Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in August 1990, led by Saddam Hussein, threatened Saudi oil fields and Western interests. The U.S., under President George H.W. Bush, mobilized a coalition, including Saudi Arabia, to expel Iraqi forces. King Fahd, Faisal's successor, hosted 500,000 U.S. troops, a move criticized by Islamists like Osama bin Laden, who, in a 1990 letter to Saudi scholars, fumed, "Foreign armies on our sacred soil betray our sovereignty." Saudi Arabia, now a linchpin of U.S. strategy, funded $36 billion of the war's cost, per Pentagon records, cementing its role as a Western ally. Israel, though uninvolved, benefited from Iraq's defeat, a mutual foe, as Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir noted in 1991. The weakening of Saddam strengthens our security. The war, orchestrated by Washington, reinforced the elite's control over oil and regional power dynamics. Simultaneously, Iran's Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, restored by the 1953 CIA MI6 coup, increasingly irked his Western patrons. His push for higher oil prices within OPEC, mirroring Faisal's 1973 stance, strained US and British economies, as did his $12 billion arms purchases, which raised fears of regional dominance. In a 1974 60 Minutes interview, the Shah boasted, "We shall be a great power equal to any in the West." His authoritarianism, enforced by CIA-trained Savak, drew criticism from human rights groups, embarrassing President Jimmy Carter. By 1978, as protests swelled, the U.S. wavered, with Carter noting in a diary entry, "The Shah's regime is unstable. We must prepare for change." The 1979 Iranian Revolution, led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, toppled the Shah, establishing a Shia-led Islamic Republic. Khomeini, hosted in France's Neauphle-Château from October 1978, used French media to rally Iranians, declaring in a 1978 interview with Le Monde, "We shall free Iran from Western oppression." France, under President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, permitted his presence, seeing it as leverage against the Shah, as a French diplomat confided in 1979. Khomeini's exile serves our strategic interests. Was this revolution another Western coup? No declassified evidence confirms CIA orchestration, unlike 1953, but the elite's tolerance of Khomeini's rise suggests a scripted shift. The Shah's fall, followed by the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis, 1979 to 1981, cast Iran as a villain, justifying Western military buildup. The Shah's alignment with Israel, through Mossad-Savak cooperation against Arab nationalists, ended, but Saudi Arabia's anti-Shia stance under Fahd aligned with U.S. goals, as he noted in a 1980 meeting with Carter, Iran's revolution threatens our stability. We stand with you. The elites, led by figures like Kissinger and MI6's John Sowers, manipulated these tensions, ensuring Sunni Shia and Arab-Israeli divides kept the region pliant. The 1980–1988 Iran-Iraq War, a brutal conflict costing 1 million lives, further exposed the elite's machinations. Sparked by Saddam Hussein's invasion of Iran's oil-rich Khuzestan, the war was fueled by Western arms to both sides. The U.S., under President Ronald Reagan, supplied Iraq with $5 billion in aid and intelligence, per declassified CIA reports, while covertly selling arms to Iran via the Iran-Contra affair, as revealed in 1986. We play both sides to maintain balance. Reagan's National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane confided in a 1985 memo. Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini, now entrenched after the 1979 revolution, rallied his nation, declaring in a 1980 speech, "This war is a crusade against imperialist aggression." France, having hosted Khomeini in Neauphle-le-Château in 1978, continued arms sales to Iran, with French Foreign Minister Claude Cheysson noting in 1981, "Our interests in Iran's stability outweigh ideological differences." Saudi Arabia, fearing Iran's Shia revolution, bankrolled Iraq with $30 billion per Gulf Cooperation Council records, aligning with U.S. interests. King Fahd, in a 1981 meeting with Reagan, warned, "Iran's fanaticism threatens our region's order." Israel, meanwhile, saw Iraq as a greater threat, covertly aiding Iran with $1 billion in arms, as Mossad chief Nahm Admoni later admitted in 1990. Saddam's ambitions endangered us more than Khomeini's zeal. This tangled web of Zionist, Saudi, and Western interests ensured prolonged conflict, weakening both Iran and Iraq, as British Foreign Secretary Geoffrey Howe remarked in 1988, "The war's stalemate serves our strategic goals." The 1993 Oslo Accords, a fleeting hope for Israeli-Palestinian peace, promised Palestinian autonomy in exchange for mutual recognition. Brokered by President Bill Clinton, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and PLO leader Yasser Arafat signed the agreement, with Rabin stating, "We choose peace over vengeance." Yet, Saudi Arabia, while cautiously supportive, withheld full endorsement, as Crown Prince Abdullah noted in a 1993 letter to Clinton, "Palestinian rights must be fully realized, not bargained away." The accords faltered amid Israeli settlement expansion and Palestinian militancy, with 1,000 deaths by 2,000 per UN reports. The US and Britain, steering the process, ensured Israel's military edge, with Clinton pledging $3 billion annually in aid per 1994 agreements, reinforcing the elite's control over the peace narrative. The 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq, launched under President George W. Bush, dismantled Saddam Hussein's regime, alleging weapons of mass destruction. "We will bring freedom to Iraq," Bush declared in 2003, yet no WMDs were found, per the 2004 Julfa report. The invasion, backed by Britain's Tony Blair, cost 100,000 Iraqi lives and $2 trillion per Pentagon estimates, and destabilized the region. Saudi Arabia, wary of Iraq's Shia empowerment, hosted U.S. bases but urged caution, as King Fahd's advisor, Prince Bandar, told Bush in 2002, "Removing Saddam risks chaos we cannot control." Iran, under reformist President Mohammad Khatami, gained influence as Iraq's Shia majority rose, with Khomeini's successor, Ali Khamenei, stating in 2003, "America's occupation strengthens our resolve." Israel, benefiting from Saddam's fall, strengthened its U.S. ties. As Prime Minister Ariel Sharon noted in 2003, Iraq's defeat secures our northern flank. As the dust of the 2003 Iraq invasion settled, the Middle East, a stage meticulously rigged by Western elites, descended into a new act of turmoil from 2004 to 2013. The 2006 Lebanon War, the 2008-2009 Gaza War, the 2011 Arab Spring, and shadowy operations like the 2010 Stuxnet cyber attack on Iran's nuclear program were not mere outbursts of regional strife, but calculated scenes in the imperial drama. From Washington and London, the puppet masters, CIA, MI6 and their allies, wove a tapestry of conflict, manipulating Zionist, Arab and Persian actors to secure oil, power and division. Beneath the surface, shadier dealings, covert assassinations, Saudi funding of militias, and Western complicity in uprisings revealed the elite's unyielding grip, with Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Iran entangled in their script. The 2006 Lebanon War, sparked by Hezbollah's capture of 2 Israeli soldiers, unleashed a 34-day Israeli assault, killing 1,200 Lebanese, mostly civilians, per UN reports. Israel's Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, declared, "We will not hesitate to defend our borders," while Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah countered in a 2006 broadcast, "This is a war of resistance against Zionist aggression." Backed by Iran, Hezbollah fired 4,000 rockets per Israeli records, while Israel's airstrikes devastated Beirut's infrastructure. The US and Britain, key Israeli allies, supplied $1.5 billion in arms per Pentagon data, with Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice calling the conflict the birth pangs of a new Middle East in 2006. Saudi Arabia, wary of Iran's growing influence via Hezbollah, quietly supported Israel's campaign, as a leaked 2006 Saudi diplomatic cable revealed. "We oppose Hezbollah's adventurism, which serves Tehran's ambitions." This rare Saudi Zionist alignment, driven by anti-Iran sentiment, underscored the elite's strategy of pitting Sunni against Shia. In Gaza, the 2007-2008 blockade, imposed by Israel after Hamas's election victory, tightened the screws on 1.5 million Palestinians, restricting food and medicine, per UNRWA reports. This is collective punishment, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh protested in 2007. The blockade, supported by Egypt and tacitly by Saudi Arabia, aimed to weaken Hamas, which Iran backed with $50 million annually per Mossad estimates. The 2008-2009 Gaza War, Israel's Operation Cast Lead, killed 1,400 Palestinians and 13 Israelis per B'Tselem, with Israel's Defense Minister Ehud Barak stating, "Hamas must be taught a lesson." Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah, in a 2009 meeting with US envoy Dennis Ross, urged, "Cut off Iran's support for Hamas," revealing a shared Saudi-Israeli interest in countering Tehran. The US and Britain, supplying Israel with $3 billion in annual aid per congressional records, ensured its dominance, while whispers of CIA-backed Palestinian factions like Fatah stirred internal strife, though no declassified evidence confirms this. The 2011 Arab Spring, a wave of uprisings, toppled regimes in Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya, while Syria descended into civil war. In Egypt, Hosni Mubarak's fall, driven by Tahrir Square protests, led to the Muslim Brotherhood's Mohammed Morsi taking power in 2012. The people have spoken for freedom, Morsi declared, but Saudi Arabia, fearing Islamist influence, funneled $4 billion to Egypt's military, per Gulf Cooperation Council records, aiding Morsi's 2013 ouster by General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. In Libya, NATO's 2011 intervention, led by Britain and France, toppled Muammar Gaddafi with 7,000 airstrikes per NATO data, killing 10,000 per Libyan estimates. "We liberated Libya from tyranny," British Prime Minister David Cameron claimed in 2011, yet the country fractured with militias looting arms depots. Syria's uprising, sparked by protests against Bashar al-Assad, became a proxy war, with Saudi Arabia funding Sunni rebels, $3 billion per 2013 leaks, and Iran backing Assad with $9 billion per UN estimates. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in a 2012 email, admitted, "Our support for Syrian rebels balances Iran's influence," hinting at CIA's Operation Timber Sycamore, which armed rebels, per 2016 leaks, though its full scope remains classified. Shadier dealings lurked in the shadows. The 2010 Stuxnet cyber attack, a US-Israeli operation targeting Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, delayed its program by years, per IAEA reports. This was a surgical strike against Iran's ambitions. A leaked 2010 Mossad memo boasted, though neither government officially confirmed involvement. Between 2010 and 2012, 4 Iranian nuclear scientists were assassinated, with Iran blaming Mossad, per Tehran's 2011 statements, though no public evidence substantiates this. Saudi Arabia, aligning with Israel against Iran, reportedly shared intelligence, as a 2010 Saudi cable leaked by WikiLeaks noted, "We must curb Iran's nuclear threat at all costs." These covert acts, orchestrated by Western elites, fueled Iran's defiance, with Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei declaring in 2011, "The West's schemes will not break our resolve."
One 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000.
Going in. You in there?
As the 21st century unfolded, the Middle East, a stage meticulously crafted by Western elites, descended into its most tumultuous act yet. From 2014 to the present day, June 2025, the rise of the Islamic State, the Syrian civil war's brutal escalation, the 2014 Gaza war, the 2015 Yemen war, and the 2024 overthrow of Bashar al-Assad marked the culmination of a century-long drama. These were no mere eruptions of regional strife, but scripted scenes in the imperial spectacle, directed by Washington, London, and their allies. Shady dealings, covert arms flows, Saudi war crimes, and whispers of Western complicity in jihadist chaos revealed the puppet master's unrelenting grip. Zionists, Saudis, Iranians and new prophets of terror danced to the elite's tune, their clashing ambitions ensuring a fractured Middle East. In 2014, the Islamic State, ISIS, led by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, seized Mosul, declaring a caliphate across Iraq and Syria. "We will conquer with God's will," al-Baghdadi proclaimed in a 2014 sermon, rallying 30,000 fighters per CIA estimates. ISIS's rise, fueled by Iraq's sectarian chaos post-2003 invasion, exploited Sunni grievances against Shia-led governments. The US-led coalition, including Britain, launched 20,000 airstrikes by 2017, per Pentagon data, killing 60,000 ISIS fighters, but also 1,200 civilians, per air wars. Shadier whispers, amplified by Iranian media, alleged CIA and Mossad orchestration, citing a 2012 DIA report predicting a Salafist principality in Syria to counter Assad. Though debunked as predictive, not directive, a 2014 email from Hillary Clinton to John Podesta admitted, "Our allies' support for radicals complicates our fight," hinting at CIA's Timber Sycamore program, which arms Syrian rebels, some of whom joined ISIS, per 2016 leaks. Saudi Arabia, funding Sunni militias with $3 billion, per UN reports, aligned with US goals, as King Salman told President Obama in 2015, Assad and Iran's proxies must be stopped at all costs. The 2014 Gaza War, Israel's Operation Protective Edge, killed 2,200 Palestinians and 73 Israelis, per UN figures, after Hamas rocket fire and Israeli airstrikes. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared, "We will restore security to our people." Saudi Arabia, though publicly critical, privately urged restraint, as a 2014 Saudi cable, leaked by WikiLeaks, revealed Hamas's actions serve Iran. Israel's response must be measured. Israel's US-backed $3.8 billion annual aid, per congressional records, ensured its dominance, while Iran's $100 million to Hamas, per Mossad, fueled resistance. The war, like the 2007-2008 Gaza blockade, deepened Palestinian suffering, with 500,000 displaced, per UNRWA, serving the elite's script of perpetual conflict. The 2015 Yemen War, led by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, targeted Iran-backed Houthi rebels, killing 150,000 by 2023 per UN estimates and causing a famine affecting 21 million. "We will crush the Houthis' threat," bin Salman vowed in 2015. The US and Britain supplied $15 billion in arms, per SIPRI, with a 2016 British Foreign Office memo admitting, "Our support for Saudi Arabia secures strategic influence." Shadier aspects, like Saudi airstrikes on civilian markets, deemed war crimes by Human Rights Watch in 2018, were downplayed by Western allies. Israel, sharing Saudi's anti-Iran stance, provided intelligence, per a 2017 Mossad leak, aligning their interests against Tehran's regional reach.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
The Syrian civil war, escalating after 2011, became a proxy battleground, with 500,000 deaths by 2024 per Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The US, Britain, and Saudi Arabia armed rebels, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, via CIA's Timber Sycamore, costing $1 billion per 2016 leaks. We must weaken Assad to curb Iran, Secretary of State John Kerry said in a 2015 cable. Iran with Russia propped up Assad with $15 billion per UN estimates, as Ayatollah Ali Khamenei declared in 2013. Syria is our front line against imperialism. Shady operations abounded. A 2013 photo of Senator John McCain with Syrian rebels, falsely linked to al-Baghdadi, fueled conspiracy theories of CIA backing for jihadists, though debunked. Israel's 200-plus airstrikes on Iranian targets in Syria, per IDF records, aligned with Saudi goals. As a 2018 Saudi diplomat told Haaretz, "We share Israel's aim to neutralize Iran's presence." The 2024 overthrow of Assad by HTS, led by Abu Muhammad al-Julani, marked the climax. "We have liberated Syria," al-Julani proclaimed in December 2024, per Al Jazeera. The US and Britain, easing sanctions on HTS, portrayed it as moderate, despite its al-Qaeda roots, per a 2023 UN report. Saudi Arabia's $2 billion to HTS, per 2024 leaks, and Israel's airstrikes weakening Assad's forces, per IDF, suggest a coordinated push. Iran, losing its ally, faced isolation, with Khamenei warning in 2025, "The West's plot against us persists." The elite's script, with CIA, MI6, and Mossad as directors, ensured chaos. As a 2015 DIA report warned, "Our rebel support risks extremist takeover." For over a century, from Theodor Herzl's Zionist vision in 1896 to the fall of Bashar al-Assad in 2024, the Middle East has been a grand stage, its every act scripted by Western elites, British, American, and European, who wielded power like maestros of a dark symphony. This was no mere sequence of wars, coups, and uprisings, but a meticulously orchestrated spectacle, driven by bloodlines, families, politicians, and secret services whose tendrils stretch back to the dawn of this saga. From the Balfour Declaration to the rise of ISIS, the same unseen hands, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Churchills, and intelligence agencies, have pulled the strings, their motives rooted in oil, global dominance, and the perpetuation of division. Had a centralized Islamic power, akin to the Ottomans, controlled the Gulf's oil, the world might stand transformed, free from the West's grip. Yet, Britain's foresight, born of its Industrial Revolution, ensured this would never come to pass, as the elites shaped a fractured Middle East to serve their eternal design. The British, the first to harness the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, recognized oil's transformative power by the early 20th century. "A nation that controls oil controls the future," declared Winston Churchill, then First Lord of the Admiralty, in 1913, as he converted Britain's navy from coal to oil, securing Persian fields through the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, later BP. This foresight drove Britain's Middle Eastern strategy, from the 1915 Treaty of Darin with Ibn Saud to the 1917 Balfour Declaration, ensuring loyal proxies, Saudis and Zionists, guarded the Gulf's wealth. The Rothschild family, financiers of early Zionism and British oil ventures, were pivotal, with Lord Lionel Walter Rothschild brokering the Balfour Declaration and Baron Edmond de Rothschild funding Jewish settlements, per Zionist archives. "Our interests align with Britain's empire," Edmond wrote in 1920, cementing a partnership that shaped Palestine's fate. Across the decades, the same bloodlines and institutions wove the narrative. The Rockefeller family, through Standard Oil, predecessor to Aramco, secured U.S. dominance in Saudi oil, post-1943, with John D. Rockefeller Jr. noting, "The Gulf's riches are our strategic lifeline." Politicians like Churchill, who orchestrated the 1921 Cairo Conference, and Henry Kissinger, who managed the 1973 oil embargo's fallout, bridged British and American eras. Secret services, MI6, CIA, and Mossad, executed the script. MI6's Percy Cox armed Ibn Saud. The CIA's Kermit Roosevelt Jr. staged the 1953 Iran coup. Mossad's Nahum Admoni facilitated Iran-Contra arms deals in the 1980s. These agencies, often collaborating, ensured chaos. A 2010 WikiLeaks cable revealed a Mossad-CIA meeting on countering Iran, with a U.S. official noting, "Our goals align. A divided Middle East serves us all." Why this grand design? The elites sought oil, the lifeblood of industrial and military might, with the Gulf holding 48% of global reserves per 2023 OPEC data. They craved geopolitical dominance, countering Ottoman, Soviet, and later Chinese ambitions, as Kissinger admitted in 1975. Our Middle East policy thwarts rival empires. Division was their tool: Sunni versus Shia, Arab versus Jew, Persian versus Arab, ensured by pitting proxies like Saudi Arabia's House of Saud against Iran's Khomeini, or Israel's Ben-Gurion against Palestine's Husseini. The Rothschilds and Rockefellers, with their banking and oil empires, funded these divides. Imagine a world where a centralized Islamic power, like the Ottomans, had retained control of the Gulf's oil. A unified empire stretching from Istanbul to Basra could have wielded 30 million barrels daily per 2023 production estimates, dwarfing Western economies. Such a power as Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II envisioned in 1900, declaring, "Our oil is our sovereignty," might have resisted British partition, fostered Arab unity, and challenged Western hegemony. Israel's creation, Iran's coups, and Saudi Arabia's rise as a fragmented proxy might have been thwarted, birthing a multipolar world where Islamic wealth funded progress, not conflict. Instead, Britain's early oil grab, via the 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement and Darin's subsidies, ensured Ottoman collapse, with Mark Sykes boasting, "We have carved their empire to our liking." Other figures pulled strings. George H.W. Bush, orchestrating the 1991 Gulf War, and Tony Blair, backing the 2003 Iraq invasion, both tied to oil interests and intelligence networks. The House of Saud, from Ibn Saud to Mohammed bin Salman, and Israel's leaders, from Weizmann to Netanyahu, were recurring actors, their loyalty bought by Western aid, $3.8 billion annually at Israel, $60 billion to Saudi Arabia, per U.S. record. Iran's Khomeini, hosted by France's Giscard d'Estaing in 1978, and Syria's al-Julani, backed by CIA funds in 2024, were cast as antagonists, yet served the script of chaos. The CIA's Allen Dulles, 1953 coup, and MI6's John Sawers, 2011 Libya, linked decades, their agencies scripting coups, wars, and uprisings. A 2015 DIA report, warning of a Salafist principality, ISIS, admitted, "Our policies risk unintended chaos," yet the elites pressed on, their motives veiled by secrecy. The Balfour Declaration, Saudi Arabia's rise, Iran's coups, and ISIS's terror all trace back to these elites, their wealth and influence, ensuring a Middle East too divided to challenge their dominion. Had the Ottomans endured, a unified Gulf might have reshaped global power. But Britain's Industrial Revolution foresight, and the elite's relentless script ensured otherwise. As Kissinger mused in 2015, chaos in the Middle East is not a failure, but a strategy.